Hello and welcome to a special interview on Wire. Is it possible that reports that there has been disengagement between Chinese and Indian forces in Gogra and Hot Springs are inaccurate and false? Could it be the case that instead of retreating from Indian territory, the Chinese have actually pushed the LAC westwards to India's disadvantage? Those are points that seem to emerge quite clearly from recent articles written by the Strategic Affairs editor of the Business Standard, Colonel Ajai Shukla. Joining me now is Colonel Shukla himself to talk about his articles and the implications that arise. Colonel Shukla, I very much want to discuss both points made in your articles, but I'll take them one by one. First, whilst every newspaper and television channel in the country happily accepts that Indian and Chinese forces have disengaged at Hot Springs and Gogra, you write, and I'm quoting yesterday's article, China's People's Liberation Army has refused to withdraw in the Hot Springs area, and at Gogra Heights, about 1,500 soldiers from either side are in confrontation. How confident are you that there's been no disengagement either at Hot Springs or at Gogra?
I'm very confident, Karan. Multiple sources have given me this information. Whether one is looking at subsector north, which is the northern tip of the Ladakh frontier, whether one is looking at subsector central, which is the Galwan area, or whether you're looking south at Depsang and I beg your pardon, Demchok, the Chinese have ensconced themselves in places like Pangong. They are, they are involved in building up their defenses. They have created concrete bunkers. They have created observation points. By all accounts and by the looks of it, they are making preparations to stay. They are not making preparations to leave. And in the one place where they have left, and that is Galwan, they have left by shifting the frontier effectively 1 kilometer into India's territory. So, I mean, this is coming to me from multiple sources. It's coming to me from local sources and so on. I'm not just relying on, the army's information as it's dished out from the PR department.
I want very much to come to Bangkok, so I want to talk about Galwan, but I'll come to that later. First, let me confirm that you are very, very confident there has been no disengagement at Hot Springs and at Gogra. Of that, you are absolutely confident.
Yes, as of this morning itself, the Chinese are still there. There are 1,000 people on the Chinese side and the Indian side in confrontation as we speak at patrolling point 15. There are 1,500 people odd from each side at the Gogra post. So this is not something which is up for doubt. It can be verified from satellite imagery and so on. So anyone who has the technical resources to check can easily verify this.
In fact, in the article you wrote yesterday, the 10th, you went one step further. You said, and I'm quoting you, because the Chinese have already intruded 2 to 4 kilometers into Indian claimed territory, the entire buffer zone will be set up in Indian territory. Yet the Chinese are refusing to concede even this. So at Hot Springs and Gogra, not only is there no disengagement, but additionally, the Chinese are refusing to vacate Indian territory.
Yes, by the looks of it, Karan, the Chinese have come in and are trying to establish the new front line, the new line of actual control on the line of the Changchenmo River. They have come there, they have got their troops on the ground over there. And at this point in time, they are not willing to withdraw to create a buffer zone because they are where they want to be. They want to be at this new frontier where they feel they will be able to hold the Indians on the Chipchap River. It's tactically advantageous for them, and pulling back 1 kilometer by the looks of it would not suit their purpose. So they're just flatly refusing to do it.
Now, in contrast to what you're saying, let me read out newspaper headlines about Gogra and Hot Springs. First, Gogra. Pull back at Gogra, that's the Indian Express. Chinese army retreats in Ladakh's Gogra, that's the Hindustan Times. Now I'll come to Hot Springs. The withdrawal at Hot Springs is complete, NDTV. Both sides start pulling back in Hot Springs sector, Indian Express. And then this morning, the Economic Times today's has the following headline: Gogra position restored, big troop pullback at Hot Springs. Are you saying that these headlines from multiple newspapers are inaccurate? In fact, they are false, they are not true.
Absolutely. That's precisely what I'm saying. They are all getting their information from one source, that is the government's outlets that are disseminating information. There is very little verification on the ground going on. There are no cross checks that these newspapers are carrying out from local sources, and they are just reporting what the government is basically saying. So all of them, if you look at the wording of their reports, it all says government sources, and that's primarily where they're getting their information from. They have to cross-check, which they're not doing.
Many of the reports are sourced to army sources, although admittedly in every single case unnamed. But you've been an army officer. Are you suggesting that these unnamed army sources are misleading the media?
Yes, the government is misleading the media, and the government is putting pressure on the army to toe the line. The army is just spouting a line, if I may use a very blunt phrase, that is laid down from the National Security Advisor's office. They want to create the impression that a pullback has taken place. Some kind of face saving is necessary from the Indian side for the new settlement to be put in place. And this is apparently the method that they've chosen to do it, which is to announce that there's a pullback. This is something that vast sections of India can never verify or cross-check, and you have a settlement based on the new line of actual control. With talk of a pullback as a face saver for India, and that's what's happening.
Let me, as an example, cite what the Indian Express said yesterday, the 10th, about the pullback at Gogra. The paper was quoting an officer who they described in the following words: a senior officer of the security establishment. And this is what that senior officer told the Express: it has been completely vacated under the same formula as PP14 and PP15, which, as you know, is a reference to Galois and Hot Springs. And then the senior officer adds, the withdrawal was completed post-noon. Verification was done at 2:30. Now that's very precise and specific, but you're suggesting it's fiction.
That is totally not precise and specific, Karan. You're a very senior journalist, and you know that when governments want to give out information of a pullout that has actually taken place, a government spokesman makes the point, verified by a government spokesman from the other side. China is absolutely silent. India is only giving out these reports from unnamed anonymous spokespersons or senior officers. Why is nobody from the government actually putting his name to these statements? For me, the very fact that it's all anonymous sourcing tells a story.
But this particular senior officer of the security establishment, that's precisely how the Indian Express described him, actually said that the pullout at Gogra had happened post-noon and had been verified at 2:30 p.m. So those specific times are made up, they're concocted.
Absolutely. If I was an army spokesperson who's giving the good news of a completed pullback, I would put my name to the report. There would be a verifiable authenticity which comes from actually giving an official statement. Why? And I keep asking you this. Is this all coming from unnamed and anonymous senior army officers? If I, as a senior spokesperson of the army, am giving an authentic report with sort of information that can be verified from the other side of the border as well, I would put my name to it.
I take that point. that if it's authentic and it can be verified from the other side of the border as well, by which you mean by the Chinese, then why aren't these army sources putting their name to it? And your suspicion arises from the fact that every single report in every newspaper, in every television channel is always sourced to an unnamed army source. But yesterday, the 10th, the Hindustan Times actually got verification from none other than Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, the former Northern Army commander. He, to the Hindustan Times, confirmed that there had been disengagement both at Gogra and Hot Springs. I will quote to you what he said. Disengagement has been successfully completed in Hot Springs and Gogra. Now, General Huda knows this part of Ladakh like the back of his hand, and he's also one of the most distinguished former army commanders. Surely he would not be deliberately misleading newspapers.
Current General Huda is somebody who I have enormous respect for. He is somebody who has been distinguished career every step of the way. Unfortunately, while he is absolutely in the picture about the geography and the terrain layout and how things work on the ground in Ladakh, when it comes to actual issues like disengagement, he is as reliant on government sources and government spokespersons as, say, the Indian Express or the Hindustan Times that you quote. So he is subject to being misled by the same kind of reporting and the same kind of misleading reports that are being given from the establishment to these newspapers. General Huda does not have sources on the ground. General Huda is an officer who retired several years ago. So he is taking at face value what his army spokespersons are telling him and reporting that as an absolute fact. He's not cross-verifying what those people are saying. He's just reporting what they're saying.
Okay, let me, for argument's sake, accept what you're saying, that unnamed sources in the army are deliberately misleading the media. As you said, they are spouting a line given to them by the NSA's office. My question is this: how do you account for the fact that every single defense correspondent has fallen for it? Literally, every single newspaper and television correspondent has accepted this line being given by unnamed sources and published it as truth in fact. How do you account for that?
I would only say to you, Karan, that in several cases, which I will not name, the senior correspondent who is in the know of what is happening has not put his name to the report. And instead, other correspondents from that newspaper have their names on the report. I will not elaborate on this any further. You would need to go and check the newspapers and whose names are put to those reports. But all I will say is that these correspondents are forced to rely on the army's statements that come out. In this country at this point in time, the army is a holy cow that cannot be questioned. So when the army spokesperson, on orders from the National Security Advisor, gives a statement that they have withdrawn from such and such place, most correspondents just take that at face value because they simply don't have the means to cross-verify. They have not got sources on the ground which take years of cultivation to create, and they have no recourse to technical intelligence either. So they just report what the army tells them, and the army is under instructions to sort of spout the line, as I put it.
I think I'll just add for the sake of the audience that your reference to newspapers where senior correspondents who are in the know are not writing the articles, not putting their name to the articles, but junior ones are, could possibly be a reference to the article in yesterday's Indian Express. But I also, like you, won't name. Let me, however, put the opposite question to you. Are you worried by the fact that you are the only, literally the only strategic editor or defense correspondent who absolutely insists there has been no disengagement at Gogra or Hot Springs? You literally are out on your own on a limb. Does that worry you?
I'm very comfortable by now being out on a limb on this particular story. From the beginning of May, I have been alone in reporting the intrusions by the Chinese, the places where they have come in, the amount of distance by which they have entered. and all along, sort of a large number of correspondents, analysts, and so on have cited satellite intelligence, all kinds of intelligence. The Prime Minister himself has come and said, "Na koi aaya hai, na koi hai andar." And now the same people are talking about disengagement and withdrawal. I mean, if there was never any intrusion, as they have all reported over the preceding 1.5 months, where are the withdrawals?
That's very clear, Colonel Shukla. You were the first with the story about the Chinese intrusions way back in February. At that time, you were alone. Most people were saying the opposite, even citing satellite images to claim that you were wrong. You turned out to be correct.
No, 1 second, Karan, let me correct you here. I was not alone until the end of February. I was even on the date that 20 Indian soldiers were unfortunately killed. There was no recognition of Chinese having intruded into our territory. The Prime Minister himself on that day said, "Na koi aaya hai, na koi hai." And now we are having admissions only in the form of admissions of withdrawal from our territory. So I have been alone on this story for a very long time, and I'm very comfortable being alone on this story.
Okay, let's then at this point come to Doval-Wang. We've discussed Gogra and Hot Springs. I want to now move to Doval-Wang. Here in your articles, you do accept there has been disengagement, but you make two very critical points. First of all, you say the buffer zone that's been created at Doval-Wang is almost entirely on the Indian side. And secondly, and perhaps more tellingly, you point out that the Indians have been pushed back some 2.4 kilometers from PP14, which is the marker for the LAC at Doval-Wang. The Chinese, on the other hand, are only 400 meters from PP14. So the point you're making is that the disengagement at Doval-Wang has happened in a way that is disadvantageous to India.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. The Chinese are able to patrol up to 400 meters from the new frontier. The frontier was always in PP14, which was some way up the Nala from where the Y junction takes place into the Galwan River. Now it is at the Y junction effectively. All the distances of disengagement have been measured from the Y junction, not from PP14. So India has effectively lost access to PP14. The line of actual control has effectively been moved 1 kilometer into the Indian side. And I would point out to you, Karan, once again, I am alone in reporting this. And there has been absolutely no denial of this from the Indian government side or from these unknown spokespersons who purport to speak on behalf of the government.
For the sake of the audience who may not have had the benefit of reading your article about Doval-Wang, the whole thing hinges on the fact that the marker at Doval-Wang that used to be the marker for the LAC was PP14. It's now been shifted to Wainala. Wainala, you wrote, is in fact 1 kilometer into Indian territory. And the first Indian post is a further 1.4 kilometers beyond Wainala, as a result of which India is now 2.4 kilometers away from PP14, the original marker. The Chinese, on the other hand, are just 400 meters away. And this is, in fact, the basis of your claim that this disengagement at Doval-Wang is disadvantageous to India. It works in China's favor, not India's.
Yes, that is not my claim. That is my assertion, which I would once again repeat has not been denied or rebutted in any way by the government of India.
Let's then at this point, Colonel Shukla, come to the second, some would say, devastating claim or assertion made by you in your Business Standard articles. You point out that far from removing Chinese soldiers from Indian territory, the LAC has been shifted westwards. And you're very specific about how much it's been shifted in each of the areas of Ladakh. You point out in your articles that it's been shifted 12 to 15 kilometers in Depsang, 1 kilometer in Galwan, 2 to 4 kilometers in Gogra, 8 kilometers in Pangong Lake. And your conclusion, for many, will be quite shaking, if not shattering. Your conclusion is, this would be the largest loss of territory to China since the 1962 war. Once again, are you absolutely sure you're right?
Yes, Karan, I'm absolutely sure because the method I have chosen for making this claim is by drawing a boundary, a de facto boundary as it exists today now after the Chinese intrusions, where instead of the patrolling points that earlier constituted the boundary or the limit up to which Indian soldiers and patrols could go, has been shifted in each single sector, in the subsector north, subsector central, and subsector south of Ladakh. If your access points, let's sort of put it in simple terms that somebody from a city can understand. If you have a ring road and an outer ring road, and earlier you could go up to the outer ring road, and now you can only go up to the ring road, then the distance between the outer ring road and the ring road has effectively been lost to you. That is what has happened as a result of the Chinese intrusions. They've come deeper into India, and that territory that existed between where they earlier came and where they have now ensconced themselves has been lost to India. So that is the territorial loss that I am talking about. And measured strictly in terms of kilometers and square meters, it is 1,000 square kilometer loss that took place
Forgive
in
me.
1962.
We lost you when you actually gave that figure. What is the square kilometer loss to India?
I'm saying that the square kilometer loss that has taken place now is the largest since the 3,000 square kilometer loss that took place as a result of the 1962 war. In the 1962 war, you would recall there was a claim line, a Chinese, and then in 1962 they came some way inside that, and as a consequence we lost 3,000 square kilometers.
Okay.
Now they have come some way from that 1962 line further into India, and we have lost a further amount of territory that is the largest since that 1962 loss.
Now, Karan Shukla, you don't need me to point out that what you're saying about the LAC shifting westwards is in fact a complete contradiction of Prime Minister Modi's assertion that neither have the Chinese intruded nor are they intruding. What you're saying is the Chinese have intruded, they continue to intrude, and they refuse to go back.
Yes, the Prime Minister's statement or assertion, as you put it, has already been disproven by the fact that the government earlier said, or the Prime Minister himself said, that there has been no intrusion, and now they are talking about a withdrawal from Indian territory. If there was no intrusion, there could be no withdrawal from Indian territory. There could be no vacation of Gogra post and vacation of PP-15. The very fact that the government is now saying that there has been a vacation of this and a withdrawal and a disengagement means that the Prime Minister's statement was misinformed and poorly advised. So to that extent, I'm quite comfortable with having my statement in contradiction to the Prime Minister's, because that the government's own statements are in contradiction to his earlier assertion.
Now, Karan Shukla, we're coming to the end of this interview, but you probably are aware that an earlier National Security Advisor, M.K. Narayanan, writing recently in The Hindu, said that this sort of Chinese intrusion into several areas of Ladakh, often happening simultaneously, could not have happened without an intelligence lapse. Would you agree that there has to be some intelligence lapse here, which accounts and explains for the fact that the Chinese have successfully intruded on such a large swathe of territory?
Yes, Karan, there has not only been an intelligence lapse, there has been a corresponding operational lapse as well. At the end of April, to be precise, on the 19th of April, the intelligence agencies reported to the army that there has been large-scale Chinese movement across the line of actual control in Demchok, opposite Pangongso, and so on. There was a very clear report given, but the army decided that that was normal springtime activity by the Chinese, and because of the fact that our own formations, defensive formations, were locked down because of COVID, we could not do our customary move to the border and sort of poise ourselves to counter any Chinese intrusion. So there was an intelligence lapse in assessing what the Chinese were up to, and there was an operational lapse in not moving our forces in advance to be able to counter that. This is something the army is well aware of. And, given the circumstances, this whole COVID pandemic thing, to some extent, it is understandable how this could have happened. But yes, there has been a lapse, and I'm sure that there will be some soul searching in this regard.
Now, not in your business standard articles, but in a piece that you did for Rediff News, you actually spoke about the operational lapses on the part of the army. And you also there said that there were concerns in some quarters that maybe the Northern Army commander, maybe even the corps commander needed to be changed. Are those concerns still continuing or have they receded?
No, my understanding is that the government has decided that getting rid of people in high command positions would be in some way an sort of admission of guilt and admission of lapses, and therefore it's best to continue with what you have. I also sort of would put down here that the officers concerned are competent, extremely well-regarded officers. So to sort of take action against them in a situation like this would perhaps be a harsh action. But yes, there was talk about this at one time. There was a sort of consideration of this, but the government, I understand, decided not to go ahead with this.
But you do still maintain the line that whether officers are replaced or changed, there have been operational lapses by the army.
There have been intelligence lapses, there have been operational lapses, but for me, the biggest and the most telling sort of lapse is the information dissemination lapse that is taking place right now. A completely false picture is being painted of what is actually going on the border. An impression of Chinese withdrawal is being created when that is not happening. And that, to me, is the greatest lapse for India in general and Indian democracy as a whole.
This is more than a lapse. The Indian people are being lied to. I'm being blunt and direct, but you're saying the Indian people are being lied to.
Well, I'm not using that word, but I'm certainly saying that there's an information dissemination gap. It is not healthy to have a situation where the Indian government is not fully informing the Indian people of what is happening, especially on the border. It leads to the politicization of this whole situation, which we have seen happen, and that is extremely unhealthy for Indian democracy.
Colonel Shukla, we've discussed your articles in detail. I've questioned you from every conceivable point of view to ensure that your facts are correct and that you are convinced that you're right, and you're not worried by the fact that every other newspaper and television channel actually disagrees with you. As you said, you were the first to break the story. You were often alone in giving details. They have not been denied by the government. And even now, 24 hours after that article came out yesterday where you said there had been no withdrawal in Hot Springs or Gogra, has it been challenged by the government? Obviously, the audience will decide for themselves. They've heard you, they've heard the questioning. Now they will decide for themselves whether they want to believe you or whether they want to believe every other television channel and newspaper. But I thank you for this interview and I thank you for speaking so fully. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for asking all the hard questions. I appreciate it.
But take care and stay safe.
You too.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.